Many God of War fans believe that the next mainline game in this series will take place in the Egyptian pantheon. This is due to multiple reasons. At one point, Santa Monica considered taking Kratos there instead of the Norse lands. There are also the mysteries brought up with the Fallen God comics that still haven't been resolved. And of course, we can't forget the many mentions the God of War series has made to Egypt throughout the many years. Clearly, the fans in Santa Monica desperately want to see Egypt come to the series. But there's a bit of a problem with that. Right now, we can't think of a good story reason for Kratos to travel there. For one thing, Kratos' days of conquering other lands were over long before the events of God of War 1. We also can't use the same way he found the Norse land as inspiration, because Kratos was wandering the earth during that time because he saw no other way forward. He knew that he didn't want to repeat the same mistakes he made in his homeland, but he also didn't believe he could change. You add on top of that his inability to die, and you have someone who just wanders the earth forever. But Kratos isn't in this mode of thinking anymore. He has changed. He now has a purpose as one of the protectors of the Norse lands. Why would he throw any of this away by starting trouble with the Egyptian pantheon? The only way, and I really mean the only way I see Kratos traveling to Egypt, would be if Atreus gets in trouble there. There's no doubt in my mind that if this were to happen, Kratos would instantly leave Freya and Tyr in charge to help his son immediately. Now, this isn't something that I came up with. Many fans have already brought up the idea of Kratos possibly traveling to Egypt on a rescue mission. But because so many fans believe this tells me that Santa Monica will probably do something more nuanced to subvert our expectations. But as it stands right now, this is the best theory I've heard from the community. But I've avoided making this into a video because if I were to, this would be it. The video would be over. Outside of Kratos dropping everything he's doing to help his son, there's not much else for me to say. I wouldn't be able to tell you how Atreus got into trouble with the Egyptian gods. I also wouldn't be able to tell you what the current events in the Egyptian pantheons are. It would simply be a pretty boring video. But that, my friends, hopefully changes today. Because I believe that I have found an Egyptian mythology story that not only sets up an Atreus kidnapping story nicely, but it also explains something I find very odd in the Fallen God comics. The story itself is one of the oldest ones we know of in Egyptian culture. It was a story engraved on the walls of the Ptolemaic temple of Horus at Edfu. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But the story itself begins with Horus the Elder informing his father Ra that some rebels are planning to overthrow him as the ruler of the Egyptian realm. Here I should clarify that Horus the Elder is not the same character as Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. Horus the Elder is a much older god and in many ways one of the first and most powerful gods of war within the Egyptian pantheon. In the myth we're discussing today, Horus the Elder transforms into this gigantic sphinx-like monster with razor-sharp claws that can easily disembowel Ra's enemies. But more terrifying is his ability to turn into a giant winged solar disc. The myth says that when he transformed into this being, it caused the rebels to go insane and attack one another. Now, later in the story it's revealed, or at least heavily implied, that Set, the god of chaos, was behind this insurrection all along. Horus the Elder eventually defeats Set and hands him off to the other Horus, who executes him in front of the other gods without any hesitation. This is the briefest description of the story I could give. I kept it brief because there's not much to the story aside from some rebels rose up and the gods took care of them accordingly. Some other gods make an appearance here and there, but they aren't that important in my opinion. But still, if you want to read the full story, I've left a link to it in the description below. For now, let's get to the reason why you all clicked on this video. Why do I think this story will be important in the God of War series? And here I should clarify something. I don't think Kratos will arrive in Egypt while this war against Set and the rebels is happening. I think Kratos will arrive in Egypt hundreds of years after this war has taken place. In fact, I believe Kratos already took part in this war without him even knowing it. Okay, so let me ask you something you already thought about. Why is it that the only monsters Kratos fights in Fallen God are a giant crocodile and a giant hippopotamus? I know Egyptian mythology doesn't have nearly as many mythological creatures as Greek mythology, but there's still a couple of other creatures that at least would be more aesthetically pleasing than just a big hippo or a big crocodile. Why not have Kratos fighting against a giant serpopard, a half leopard and half snake creature? They could have also had Kratos fight against a sphinx. After all, there isn't just a single type of sphinx in Egyptian mythology. So why did the writers settle down with two very boring looking monsters? Well, I think the writers had to settle down with a crocodile and a giant hippo because those were the creatures that Set unleashed on the gods during his rebellion. Some sources even claim that they were originally Set's human followers that Set turned into hippos and crocodiles using his powers. As god of chaos, he would be able to do such a thing very easily. And what do the Egyptian people and fallen god call these monsters? They refer to them as chaos beasts. It's also important to point out that even though these people are terrified of these creatures, they also don't seem too surprised by them. Almost as if this has been happening a lot more recently to them. So yes, I believe Kratos arrived in Egypt while Set's rebellion was underway, and helped in pushing him back without even knowing it. Also, another god accompanying Ra and Horus the Elder in the fight against the rebels is none other than Thoth himself. He is there to write an account of the events that are currently taking place, which is very similar to his role in Fallen God, where he follows Kratos around and reminds him to embrace what's already been written. And in this case, I think Thoth was referring to his role in the fight against Set, even if Kratos didn't know it. Now, people who have watched my channel for a long time might think that this theory contradicts one of my most popular theories that I made recently. It's a theory where I point out the connection between the Monsters of the Fallen God comics and the Demiurge, or as I like to call it, the Chaos Realm. And you can probably already see where I'm going with this. Set, being the god of chaos, is nothing more than a representative for the Demiurge, the being that runs the higher and more powerful Chaos Realm. I believe the Demiurge uses certain gods from the world below to do his bidding. I suspect that most of them don't even know it. Look at Odin, he was obsessed with putting on that mask to gain unlimited knowledge. The Demiurge probably tricked Set in a similar way, but instead of promising him knowledge like he did to Odin, he promised him power, the thing he craves the most. So he gave him the power to turn his followers into the chaos beasts we see in the Fallen God comics, and that's why they have the trademark neon color associated with the Chaos Realm. If you want to learn more about this theory of the higher plane of existence and the Demiurge fighting over Kratos, I suggest watching the video after this one. The point of this video is to convince you that Santa Monica will most likely use the Set rebellion as the catalyst to begin the Egyptian Saga. Because while Kratos did help push Set advances by killing his Chaos Beasts, he might have set Atreus up for failure. Because the story of Set's rebellion ends in a very interesting way. Even though Set is defeated, he is not killed. This is what the story says about Set. Then Set took upon himself the form of a hissing serpent, and he entered into the earth in this district without being seen. And Ra said, Set hath taken upon himself the form of a hissing serpent. Let Horus, the son of Isis, in the form of a hawk-headed staff, set himself over the place where he is, so that the serpent may never more appear. So after his defeat, Set managed to escape in the form of a serpent by hiding underneath the ground. And to keep an eye on him, Horus the Younger was stationed there. This sets up the Egyptian world perfectly for the God of War series, because as many of you know, Atreus is now on a mission to find his people, the Giants. All Set has to do to be free once again is convince Atreus that he was one of those who escaped Odin's persecution many years before, only to be unjustly imprisoned in Egypt for being a foreigner, a feeling that he himself might be experiencing after leaving his home. I'm not sure how Set will accomplish this, but it's not like it's impossible. First, Set is already portrayed as a trickster god himself. Many years before his rebellion, Set tricked his brother Osiris into getting into a coffin which he later threw in the river Nile. And he didn't do this as a brotherly prank. No, he was once again looking to gain more power. And killing his brother king was the only way to achieve this. Atreus is also too kind. His father can smell the god's trickery and deceit a mile away. But Atreus is still too young, too naive in my opinion. So naive that even after everything Odin did, he tried to save him at the end. And lastly, it wouldn't be too difficult for Atreus to believe that Set was indeed one of his long-lost giant brothers. After all, they can both shapeshift. So here's my prediction of how I think this story might play out. After the game comes out, you can come back to this video so you can either congratulate me for being correct or make fun of me. Either one works with me. But this is what I think will happen in the story of God of War Egypt. Much like his father, Atreus has been wandering the earth looking for his long-lost giant family. Also, because he loves animals, he is now traveling with Hugin as his pet. He can do this without any fear of Odin returning because Atreus can communicate with animals fully and can tell that Odin is nowhere in there. Now, after a couple of years of wandering the earth, he arrives in Egypt and accidentally frees Set. Set unleashes chaos in the Egyptian world once again, and Atreus gets captured by him, for reasons I don't know at the moment. But before being taken, Hugin takes Atreus' mistletoe necklace and fly back to the Norse lands. Now, this will be the actual intro of the game. Kratos and the other Norse gods have heard rumors of a neighboring pantheon approaching the Norse border to conquer them. Kratos, being the protector of the Norse lands, forms an army comprising of gods and humans to meet the approaching army. Kratos of course has to lead his army while wearing his cape and riding Sleipnir, Listen up, Mudsofos. I don't know what justification in the story you'll come up with, but Kratos has to be riding Slipnir in the intro. And get me a latte while you're at it. I expect this fight to be similar in spectacle to the one from Chains of Olympus. So insert in your imagination the biggest and baddest monster you want to see Kratos fighting in this intro. After the battle is over, the celebration by the Norse army will be interrupted by the sound of Hugin. I don't know if that's what crows sound like, but... Anyway, that's not important. What's important is that Hugin will deliver to Kratos Atreus' necklace. At first, Kratos suspects that this is Odin trying to get him to leave the Norse lands to take control once again. And who knows, this might be the case, depending on where Santa Monica wants to take the story. But anyway, here's where Angrboda will step forward and confirm Kratos' worst fears. Using the marble Atreus gave her at the end of God of War Ragnarok, Angrboda is able to confirm that Atreus has indeed been captured.
They swapped the marbles. You know, the marbles are what help. They're almost like compasses that help find each other when they go through the Utgard, and it's like, you know, she already had his, that's why she keeps finding him, but she gave him her marble. And
using the marble, Angrboda can see that Atreus is captured in some place with a lot of hieroglyphs and sand. Hey, brother, I think the lad has gotten in trouble with the Egyptians. It's horrible. Here's when Kratos will hand his responsibility to Freya's and Tyr and head out. And if Santa Monica still is thinking of keeping the formula intact, Angrboda will tag along and become the new companion AI. If this is the case, all I hope is that Santa Monica gives her a proper weapon. The last thing we want to see is Angrboda attacking Egyptian monsters with her colorful paint powder. But hopefully it's just Kratos and Mimir who go on this adventure, two bros chilling, just like they did in Valhalla. And that, my friends, is how I think the Egyptian Saga will begin. Of course, this whole theory/prediction hinges on the belief that Atreus will be captured by Set. Like I said earlier, Santa Monica is equipped with much better writers than myself, so maybe the reason for Kratos going to Egypt will be drastically different. But if you like my take on how this could happen, make sure to save this video somewhere and come back to it when the game comes out. In the meantime, let me know what you think about this theory in the comments section below. With that said, I want to give a big thanks to all of my YouTube and Patreon members for their monthly support of the channel. If it wasn't for you guys, this channel would probably not be here. And of course, I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. I know it doesn't seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching. And remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.